Hello, everyone. Welcome to part two, day two of the Denver Fight Club 40K 10th Edition GT for July. This is part two and day two, so if you have not watched day one yet, please go back and check my other video. Should be pretty easy to find. This is me running my tier Nids for day two. Day one, I ended up going 2-1. So starting day two, we are going into someone else who is going to be 2-1, and very specifically, we are following the new GW suggested win path for pairings, meaning that I am going to be going up against someone else with a loss-win-win record. So with that, let's get started into what was game number 4. Game number 4 was against Andre, who was playing Custodes. As you can kind of see in the picture, his army was not painted, so he was playing 10 points down. And actually, interestingly enough, I actually got paired down. So me saying that I was going to get into someone else with a loss-win-win record. I believe at this time, Andre had a win-loss-loss record, I think. So there was a pair down happened. And but yeah, Andre is playing Custodes, which is a very difficult matchup for my army specifically, but pretty much any combat army in the game. If you don't know why, it's because Custodes have a stratagem to be able to fight first if they're on an objective. And they have a character that can give you strats for free, same as most armies. But and then Trajan has a once per game ability to either fight twice, have a 2-up invuln, or give his unit fight first. So that means any combat armies that want to charge Custodes, Custodes are just tougher, hit harder, and they get to fight first. So they are absolutely dominating other combat armies in the game right now, to the point where they're kind of the only combat army that's really allowed if you want to be in a tournament. That being said, they are susceptible to shooting, and they obviously have a pretty low model count, very elite army, so their board presence and scoring abilities are not as great as other armies. So with that in mind, I was definitely hoping to basically just force him to go all over the table and then just be where he is not to score more points and win the game. So let's go over his list first real quick. It basically was 3 giant units, as you can kind of see with our deployment. We were playing table quarters with the circle in the middle again, and this was supply drop. That is the mission where objectives are going to disappear, and you only score primary for holding no man's land objectives. Your home objective is worth nothing, and the no man's land objectives for turns 2 and 3 are worth 5 points each. And then turn 4, beginning of turn 4, one of the objectives disappears, and the other 2 are worth 8 points. And round 5, there is only one objective left in no man's land, and it is worth 15 points. So with that knowledge, I took my same fixed secondaries of engage, but then instead of doing cleanse, because objectives would be disappearing and he had a low model count army to screen out his deployment zone, I also elected to do teleport homers. And he elected to just play tactical. So his list, 3 giant bricks of guys. So you have 10 custodian guard joined by Trajan. Then you have 6 Alaris custodians, which were joined by a shield captain in Terminator armor, and another 6 custodian wardens joined by a blade champion. And he had the enhancement of the veiled blade. I'm not sure. Something about the blade champion allows them to once per game advance and charge. I don't know if that's his data sheet or if that is the veiled blade enhancement. But But in addition to those 3 giant bricks of infantry, he also had 4 prosecutors. That is the little sisters that you see in the top right corner right there. And they're just camping on his home objective. In addition to that, he has a 2-man custodian Terminator squad and a 3-man custodian warden squad and another 3-man custodian warden squad. So he elected to deep strike his 2-man Terminator and his 3-man custodian wardens and deployed everything else on the table, and successfully screened out his deployment zone. As opposed to yesterday, where I went second every single time, I ended up getting first turn in this game. Unfortunately, against him, I really didn't want first turn because, as I said, you can't really fight Custodes. So what I elected to do instead was basically push everything forward and be most likely out of charge range. If he did decide to come and charge me, then I would be able to basically jump on top of whatever unit that was with my entire army, and hopefully that would be enough to bring down these very elite infantry. Unfortunately, he was able to completely screen out his deployment zone for my deploy teleport homers. So I had a Lictor just deploy in the center, meaning I only got 2 points for that, but I was able to... I only got 2 points for that, and I got 2 points for engage because I could not get into his table quarter. I just didn't want to just hand him free stuff, basically. And all I did was put a single Lictor on the bottom right and in the center, and then I actually stayed off of the top left objective. I put 1 Lictor on top of all 3 objectives, ideally outside of most of his shooting range. And yeah, on his turn, he ended up drawing Bring It Down and Extend Battle Lines as his secondaries. So extend battle lines for him was super easy. He just had Trajan's giant 10-man brick advance forward onto the center, where he was able to easily get extend battle lines. And aside from that, he fired a few pot shots at Death Leaper. I think he was able to get in range, but he got 2 of his bolters through, dealing 4 damage, but Death Leaper was still alive with 3 wounds left. Yeah, so he got his extend battle line and decided to toss Bring It Down because, again, my only monster was my Hive Tyrant, and he asked basically the durability of that, realized he was never going to take it down in shooting, and wasn't entirely sure he wanted to mess with it in combat either, so just decided to toss Bring It Down. But he scored his 5 points for extend battle lines. Important point of note, when we rolled for what missions are going to what objectives are going to disappear, the center objective was going to be the one that disappeared turn 4, which actually was really good for me. This mission in general is probably the worst one I could get against Custodes because my whole plan against them is to be where they're not and score that way. And unfortunately, because there's only 3 objectives that actually score and then that disappears down to less and less, it means that plan kind of goes out the window and I'm forced to actually engage with them. But in this one, at least it was the center objective, which he had the most easily defendable by him, is the one that's going to disappear first. Followed by the bottom right is going to disappear on turn 5, meaning the final objective is going to be that top left, which is why you see me skewed that way with a lot more of my army, including the Hive Tyrant. So yeah, that was the end of turn 1. I got 2 points on engage and deploy. He got 5 points on his extend battle line. And then going into my turn 2, this is basically what you see. I had the bottom right and the top left objectives to get 10 primary. And I still didn't really engage a lot. I basically shot my Barb Gaunts to slow him down. Unfortunately, Trajan's squad cannot be slowed down. I think the only combat that I did for my turn 2 was I charged 6 Raveners into his 3-man squad just his 3-man Warden squad, hoping that that would be small enough that even if he did fight first with them, he wouldn't kill too many guys, and probably like 4 Raveners would at least pick off a guy or two. Especially because one of them was wounded down to 1 from my shooting. And so I definitely was going to finish off that guy and maybe kill a second one, was my hope. However, he decided to spend his 2 CP to heroically intervene with Trajan's giant squad, and then he rolled an 11 for that charge, which resulted in this. Resulted in me finishing my top of 2 with him killing all of the Raveners, because he then also popped Trajan's fight first. So he heroically intervened and then popped Trajan's once per game ability to fight first and kill all 6 of my Raveners before they got to punch. I did elect to fight in death, and I managed to... I fought in death, and out of my 6 Raveners that died, only one of them rolled a 4+, but I do think he managed to kill the 1 wound Warden. But unfortunately, I basically just handed him 6 Raveners and gave him 11 extra inches of movement on his big main squad with Trajan. So now this is around the end of his movement on his turn 2, where he did deep strike in his 2-man Terminators and his 3-man Wardens from reserve. They deep struck bottom right to try a 9-inch charge against Death Leaper on that objective. And basically he's just, all of a sudden, he's pressuring everywhere. He's got his 6-man Warden Brick in the middle right that is going to kill off all of my gargoyles off the objective. His giant 10-man Trajan Brick is going to kill off all of my Barb Gaunts and a Lictor in the center. And then he has his 6-man Terminator unit to kill off my second squad of Raveners on the top left objective. So even despite me slowing him down everywhere I could with my Barb Gaunts, he is still all over the place. And unfortunately, he manages to completely take that center objective. And in the bottom right, he successfully made a charge with his 2-man Terminator squad. The 3-man Warden squad did not make the 9-inch charge from Deep Strike. And then here you see his Terminators did successfully charge into my Raveners. I elected my Hive Tyrant to use his free stratagem to heroically intervene and basically be able to charge up where those Custodians or those Terminators were going to put the vast majority of all of their attacks into the Raveners, and only one would be able to punch the Hive Tyrant, and then the Hive Tyrant could kill a bunch of them, at least was the hope. And for his secondaries this turn, by the way, he drew Behind Enemy Lines and Storm Hostile Objective. Behind Enemy Lines, obviously it's only turn 2, and he is a little slow, so he didn't quite get that one. But Storm Hostile Objective, he very easily, he killed Death Leaper off of the bottom right. He killed everything off of the center with his giant 10-man Trajan blob. And up here, he manages to kill the Raveners, who I, again, fight on death. And unfortunately, I only make 2 out of my 6 4-ups. So only 2 of them fought in death. Managed to do 2 damage, which was important because he had decided to pop a stratagem for -1 damage on those Custodians, and meaning that my Hive Tyrant his 3 damage was going down to 2. So getting one of them down to 2 from the Raveners actually was very helpful, because then the Hive Tyrant did manage to actually kill, I think, 3 of them. He killed the wounded one plus 2 more with his 6 attacks. Thankfully, I rolled really well. My 6 attacks ended up getting 8 hits because of my sustained hits against infantry. They all wounded, and he failed 5 of them. So that was nice. Thankfully, he ended up popping a lot of his 4-up Feel No Pains really early in the game when I was shooting at him. He was worried about my warrior shooting because it was an extra AP from plunging fire. And so because that was putting him at his invulns, he really didn't want to lose any guys at all early, so he popped his 4-up Feel No Pains. I think a little prematurely, but I did manage to get my full points for engage and deploy teleport homers, though, on my turn 2, because he had moved forward, so I was able to fit some spore mines in his deployment zone. And yeah, this is just the image of the middle objective with, the giant 10-man Trajan blob killing off my Lictor and my Barbgaunts, and the remaining 2 guys that I'd originally charged from my first Ravener squad. They charged in to finish off the 2 Gaunts, or the 2 Gargoyles that did not die from shooting. But yeah, he completely decimated all of this. There was nothing left. The Lictor, I think, killed the 1 wound guy out of Trajan's squad with his fight first, and then everything else just died. And here's showing Death Leaper managed to get 1 wound through on the Terminators, putting him down to 2 wounds before they finished him off. So he only had 3 wounds left from shooting, and yeah, their attacks were more than enough to obliterate Death Leaper. And this is just a picture to show the his turn, all the charges that he made, and everything that ended up dying. Like I said, everything is dead that he's in combat with, except for my Hive Tyrant, and my Hive Tyrant managed to kill, I think, 3 of the 6 Custodian Guard up there. Well, it's 6 Terminators plus the Terminator Captain. So he has 4 guys left, including the character. And yeah, looks like I took a lot more pictures of this game than any of the others, but it obviously that was a very influential turn that kind of determines a lot of what the rest of this game was going to be like. And yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't hurt him really at all in that combat. So as you can see, this is the after effects of the end of his turn 2. So we still have a long ways to go game time wise. And because of that, my turn 3, obviously I did not hold any of the midfield objectives, so I got a 0 on my primary, but I did manage to get my engage and deploy teleport homers because I still had a second Lictor hanging out down in the bottom right, and I was able to fire another Spore Mine off into his deployment zone to do a teleport homer and get the other engage. But unfortunately, the Hive Tyrant managed to continue fighting off the Terminators. He killed 1 more and only took 2 damage in response, which was actually fantastic because that procced his adaptive regeneration. So now he has a 4-up Feel No Pain. And yeah, I basically just swarmed a bunch of Gargoyles onto the top left objective in order to steal it away, just OC it, and yeah, basically just trying to make sure that he's not going to score a ton of primary. My only way of winning this game is by points. So basically everywhere that I can possibly deny him points, I need to take it. I did manage to shoot off the Terminator and a half that had killed Death Leaper. So I shot him off of the bottom right, and then the Gargoyles out OC'd him in the top left. So with that, I left him with only the middle with his giant 10-man brick with Trajan. That's OC 30, so there's nothing I can do there. But I was just hoping, okay, this is the one turn he's going to have that, because then that objective is going to disappear. And so yeah, he only got 5 primary, and for his secondaries for turn 3, he drew Assassinate and Defend Stronghold. He elected to just immediately pitch Defend Stronghold because it's hold his home objective at the end of my turn, and I'd been basically making 1 Spore Mine with 1 Biovore, and the other Biovore had been killing 1 sister a turn. So he only had 2 sisters left on his home objective, and basically if my Biovores got lucky and killed 2 of them, then he would have lost that objective and not gotten that 3 points. And rather than hold on to it for a whole extra turn, because if that happened, he elected to just pitch Defend Stronghold at the end of his turn. So he got 5 for his supply drop, and then he elected to come over to the top left, meeting the Hive Tyrant with Trajan and all of his friends. So yeah, as you can see, he left his single 2-man Warden squad on the middle objective, and Trajan and friends moved up to go and join in the Terminators with fighting off the Hive Tyrant. And doing that was especially important because he had drawn Assassinate as his other secondary. And so it really came down to I definitely needed the Hive Tyrant to survive. He multi-charged, putting I think 3 guys into those 3 Venom Thropes, and the remaining, including Trajan, into the Hive Tyrant. And after Trajan and his unit attacked me, I was put down to 4 wounds left. And then I got to go, and I believe I killed 3 of Trajan's squad. I had a really difficult choice to make of whether I wanted to go allocate my attacks into the Terminators, who had not swung yet, or into Trajan's squad. And normally that's an easy answer. You want to go into the squad that hasn't attacked yet, except for the fact that the squad that hadn't attacked yet required 2 hits per guy to kill, whereas Trajan's squad required only 1. And based on my previous time fighting against them, I'd only taken 2 wounds, so I figured I was safe with them hitting me again, since I still had 4 wounds, and now I had a 4-up Feel No Pain as opposed to a 5-up Feel No Pain from last turn. However, unfortunately, as you can see, I was incorrect, and I just completely whiffed my saves and my Feel No Pains, which really sucked because I was saving my CP reroll plus the free stratagem for another CP reroll to be able to save the Hive Tyrant. So yeah, I had a 4-up Invuln with a 4-up Feel No Pain and 2 free rerolls against damage, and 2 Terminators plus a Shield Captain was enough to finish me off anyways. I unfortunately just rolled really bad and died, and that was huge because not only does that get him 5 points for Assassinate, but that's also just another turn where I'm not punching his guys with someone who is kind of the only guy in my entire army that can actually hurt them. So with that, he succeeded in getting his 5 points for turn 3 with Assassinate. And that means that also he now has the top left objective, and in the bottom right he moved his 3-man squad onto the bottom right, while his 6 wardens kind of just pressured towards my deployment zone. And so what that meant is I actually finished, I began my turn 4 with no objectives in no man's land, so I got another 0 on primary, especially now that the center objective has disappeared. And all I have left in my army is 2 lictors, 2 squads of my ranged warriors, and my 2 biovores still hanging out in the back. So the warriors, deciding they need to do something, actually they came down and with shooting managed to finish off all of Trajan's remaining squad except for Trajan himself, or at least I got him down to Trajan plus a single guy left, with the warriors shooting. And then with their charges, they charged into the remaining 2 wardens from way back in when my first charge, where my Raveners managed to kill 1 of them. But yeah, these warriors, they shot and killed Trajan's friends off of the top left, but unfortunately the Terminators and their character and Trajan himself were still there. The Lictors then also charged into Trajan, where he then did the free strat from his Shield Captain to heroically intervene with his Terminators up against my 2 Lictors. So that's what you see there is my 2 Lictors went in and charged against Trajan, and they managed to kill the 1 remaining guy that was in Trajan's unit other than Trajan himself. So they managed to finally finish off that 10-man squad. However, then he had heroically intervened, and so then those Terminators got to go and they killed off that Lictor, and then Trajan got to go, and Trajan ended up getting 2 wounds onto my Lictor. I had a 5-up invuln save. Each one was 3 damage. I failed both of them and would have died, except I CP rerolled it and managed to make it with the CP reroll, just specifically to keep him still in combat and keep threatening, at least, prevent him from pushing further into my lines. So the Lictor managed to survive and at least keep him tied up for his turn. And also, amazingly enough, the warriors actually managed to kill off the 2 other wardens from the center. So they are in the center of the board, at least preventing him from pushing closer into my lines and potentially threatening the top left objective for the end of the game. Unfortunately, what you're seeing here is me at the end of turn 4. We're about to go into Custodes' turn 4, where you can see he unfortunately owns both of the No Man's Land objectives, which are currently worth 8 points each, meaning he gets 16 primary. And his secondaries that he pulled was Deploy Teleport Homer and Area Denial. So Deploy Teleport Homer, he did not even bother chancing because it's do an action in the center. He only has 3 units left on the table, and only 1 of which can deploy in the center. And his other objective of Area Denial means I need to be out of the center. So what he ended up doing was that 6-man Warden squad plus the Blade Champion came into the center to kill off all 12 of my warriors, while he finished off the Lictor in the top left. And unfortunately with that means that at the start of my turn 5, I once again do not own the only objective that is on the battlefield. So I get a 0 on primary again. And however, I have managed to get engaged on all fronts and deploy Teleport Homer every single turn, specifically because of Biovores. And when he charged in, I actually did have a single warrior with 1 wound left survive. So he fell back to get me engage in the bottom right table quarter, and then Spore Mines got me the top left and the top right, plus my Deploy Teleport Homer. So that enabled me to at least continue scoring secondaries. However, that meant that for Andre, his turn 5, he does hold the only objective on the battlefield, which is worth 15 more primary points. And for his secondaries, he actually held on to Deploy Teleport Homer, and he got a Tempting Target, which is literally, there's only one objective that I could pick, which is the one he's already on. So he scored 5 points for a Tempting Target, and he did have he had Trajan himself went in to go deploy the Teleport Homer to finish out the game, leading to a Custodes victory. Very clearly, he was dominating the game, but actually the score was not as disparate as you would think it would be. So, yeah, despite the complete domination of Custodes over the Tyranid forces, and me only getting 10 points on primary, Spore Mines are really good. So I did manage to get 36 of my 40 secondaries, and Custodes got 30 of theirs. And I did actually manage to prevent Custodes secondaries for the most part for the first 2 turns. It was turn 4 and 5 that really came back to get me. And also keep in mind, my opponent was playing 10 points down because of being unpainted, so that almost enabled me to catch up to him. Unfortunately, it was a Custodes victory, 66 to 56. My army, being a combat army, just could not handle him being able to fight first basically wherever he wanted. And so that brings us to game 5. I am now 2-2, going up against Tau. So this is the first time that I'm fighting an army that I believe is not as powerful as Tyranids. Obviously, round 1 being against Imperial Knights, round 2 being against Eldar, round 3 being against Space Marines, and round 4 being against Custodes. I do believe all 4 of those armies are inherently more powerful than the Tyranid Codex, at least just in terms of raw killing power and durability. And now I am game 5 versus Tau, and I do believe that Tyranids actually have, they are stronger and hit harder and more durably than the Tau army do. So with this, game 5 is against Tau. I'm playing against John, and the mission that we are playing is Scorched Earth. So this is where you can destroy any of these center objectives. Basically, you get 5 points per objective you control, up to 10, and then at the end of the game, you get 5 points for every no man's land objective that you have burned, and you get 10 points if you have burned your opponent's objective at the end of the game. So that is your primary. And for secondaries, I again went for Engage and Cleanse, and John elected to play Tactical. John's list, as you can see, is 3 Pathfinder units, 1 Fire Warrior squad, 3 individual broadsides, 2 hammerheads, a ghost keel, 2 units of 3 stealth suits, and Shadow Sun. And then he had a squad of 6 crisis suits with a Cold Star commander that he put in Deep Strike. However, same as against the Custodes game, I ended up winning the role for going first. And with that, winning the role for going first, I just advanced forward everywhere. He had castled enough to hide from all of my shooting, and so I just pushed forward with everything. And as you can see in the top left there, I had my Gene Stealers run forward, and they did manage to kill off his 2 squads of 3 stealth suits that he had put in that building. He was hiding most of his stuff behind the walls, that those stealth suits were actually, they were just right up against the wall, so I was able to punch through the wall at them. Only with that front line of Gene Stealers, because I was not in base to base because there was a wall between us, so that second line of Gene Stealers did not get to fight. However, a Broodlord and single Gene Stealer was enough to kill 1 squad of 3 stealth suits, and 5 other Gene Stealers managed to kill off the second squad of 3 stealth suits. As far as shooting, I didn't have any, other than I made a Spore Mine, as you can see in the top right, to get me my Engage in that corner, and I made another Spore Mine in the bottom left, and that was just to help me out with screening against his potential crisis suits that were going to come in potentially turn 2. And I left my Pyrovore to help screen out my bottom left corner from the same. I just had Lictors cleanse those objectives in the middle and right. I was going to have Death Leaper burn the left objective, since he seemed to have castled mostly in that left corner. I wanted to just remove that objective from the game. However, you cannot burn turn 1, we found out. So that did not happen, and instead I just took full board control and told him he had to come out and shoot me. And John was more than happy to oblige. He pushed everything forward and ended up, he had 1 Hammerhead shoot down and kill my Pyrovore that was in the bottom left. Just, you know, he didn't have a ton of targets. It was that or like a warrior or gargoyles. So he killed the Pyrovore, and the second Hammerhead, his secondaries that he pulled was actually Overwhelming Force, which is 3 points for every unit that you kill off of an objective. He got that in addition to Investigate Signals. He drew Investigate Signals and Behind Enemy Lines, and he tossed Behind Enemy Lines, spending a CP turn 1, and drew Overwhelming Force instead to be able to get 3 points for every unit you kill off of an objective. And that second Hammerhead managed to shoot and destroy my Biovore that was on my home objective. It was able to just barely get a line on him. So with that did get him 3 points there. And then the entire rest of his army shot everything into my Gene Stealers that were just right in front of him. And Shadow Sun shot and killed 1 Venom Throat. However, Tau shooting is definitely not what it used to be. So even with basically his entire army shooting into my Gene Stealers, I did pop 5-up Feel No Pain on them, and he killed all of the Gene Stealers, but the Broodlord was still left alive at the end of all the shooting with 3 wounds left. I did definitely roll a little hot. I was making my 5-up invulns all over the place against all of his rail rifles, and even when he was getting damage through, I was making pretty decent Feel No Pains just to... The unit lived way longer than it should have. But honestly, even if the Broodlord hadn't died, him having to put his entire army into one unit feels terrible. So this is now the beginning of my turn 2, where you can see I just pushed forward and jumped on everything. So between Barb Gaunts getting 50 shots on his Pathfinders and everyone else being able to jump onto his Ghost Keel that he had pushed up to take that top left objective away from Deathleaper, I didn't end up killing the Ghost Keel in that round of combat, but I did put him down to, I think, 2 wounds left, and I obviously out-OC'd the objective. And then the Raveners managed to... They charged some Fire Warriors that actually somehow didn't kill them all, because they were like -1 to wound from a drone, and the Ethereal gave them a 5-up Feel No Pain. And so even with 40-something attacks that are Strength 5, AP 1 for 1, and Twin Linked, they actually... I think they only lost like 3 guys. But, I mean, turnabout's fair play. I saved my Gene Stealers way more than I should have, and his Fire Warriors definitely lived when they shouldn't have. But I did kill the vast majority of all of his Pathfinders with the Barb Gaunts specifically, and then some Warrior shooting helped. I think I put both of his 10-man squads down to 3, and I killed the 3rd one. And my Raveners were able to make a charge into Shadow Sun and kill her off of the middle objective, leaving him with only his home objective left for control. And of course, I scored my engage on all fronts and my cleanse with the same 2 lictors, just doing the same center and right objective. And then that was the end of my turn. And I also managed to... I moved my Gargoyles down to the bottom left, and a Spore Mine plus Gargoyles screened out the bottom right. And basically, I put another Spore Mine near my center objective. It's in that dice pile, which you can't really see, but that was also preventing him from deep striking anywhere in my deployment zone. So the only spot he could bring his crisis suits in was actually in his own deployment zone, because I was just over the entire table. And so with that, combined with the fact that at the beginning of his turn 2, I declared Shadow in the Warp to battle shock a bunch of guys, and I think he failed like 4 or 5 of them. Not that I think any of them were relevant, because he wasn't going to be using any strats on them, but it just felt really bad, I guess, and he conceded the game. So that is the second opponent that, when I declared Shadow in the Warp, just instantly conceded the game. So I guess it works on humans too. I don't know. I don't feel great about having opponents concede super early, but it's understandable. Their Tau firepower was just not there, and especially my Venomthropes making everything -1 to hit. Like, I mean, he didn't even shoot at the stuff that was -1 to hit, but he would have had to if we'd continued playing, and yeah, he just very clearly didn't have very much left, and his crisis suits couldn't go anywhere that he needed them to. So with that, he conceded the game, and so we called that one again 100 to 30. Just is what I decided to give him with the concede. However, I mean, you can see what the score was when we started, and as you can see, he is also not fully painted, so he was also playing 10 points down. But yeah, as you can see, I was set to completely dominate this game, and he had drawn Tempting Target and deployed Teleport Homer, so obviously I could just pick the far right objective as the tempting target, and he wasn't going to be able to get over there, and deploy teleport Homer is do an action in the center or my deployment zone, and that was also impossible for him. So just the demoralizing of the Shadow in the Warp, plus not being able to score any points at all, plus his army getting crushed. Yeah, he decided to call the game there, and as you can see, I was on track to basically just completely run away with the game. So that is the end of round 5. I am now 3-2, and we have one final round to play. However, random side note, I took this picture because I thought it was hilarious. This was a demon on demon matchup that I walked past as I was going towards the top tables where my teammates were at. And yeah, it was demon on demon matchup, and it was Skarbrand versus Skarbrand, Be'lakor versus Be'lakor, and Shalaxi versus Shalaxi. I took the picture right after they just picked up the other Shalaxi, but just thought that was absolutely hilarious that they just decided to have a total face-off of every single named demon against themselves. So that was really entertaining. Okay, but then that brought us to round 6, where I ended up getting Eldari again. And this time it was very much the more meta Eldar list that I was expecting to see with, let's see, he had his Autarch Wayleaper just to get him extra command points and have a lone operative. He had a Farseer who actually was not attached to anyone and just hung out in his in that back L in the top right by himself, but with Reader of Runes to be flipping Fate dice to a 6. He also had a Farseer Skyrunner as well as a Warlock that were joined to a 10-man Guardian squad that you can see he spread out on his back objective. I considered playing fixed in this, or I considered doing teleport homers again in this one because we are playing the vital targets where the center objective disappeared, so we're only playing with 4 objectives. So I didn't know whether to go for cleanse or teleport homers, and figuring he was Eldar who probably wanted to at least castle back a little bit, I did decide to go cleanse and force him to come towards me to stop me from cleansing those objectives. So I did take my same 2 fixed secondaries that I've always been taking, and he decided to go tactical. But sorry, I should not be interrupting lists. He has Illic Night Spear. So Illic joined by 5 Rangers, which he infiltrated in that ruin on that top left objective. You can't see him there, but obviously they're in the building. He then has his 10 Guardian Defenders that's joined by the Farseer and Warlock I was talking about. He has 2 Hornets. Those are the fun double Bright Lance 80-point light vehicles. A squad of 10 Shadow Specters. So those are the Forge World guys that I guess are Aspect Warriors, and they're really good. I did not realize that they are stealth and have a 3-up armor save, so that'll come into play later. But his support weapons, he's got 3 D cannons, of course, hiding in that big L in his deployment zone. He has 5 Swooping Hawks, a Viper to give ignore cover to whatever unit he decides to just obliterate, and then 3 Warwalkers, all with double Bright Lance, and of course, the giant 10-man Wraithguard squad joined by Spirit Seer who can flip dice to 6s. So that is the much more meta Eldar list that I was expecting to face. And yeah, as you can see, I deployed pretty defensively. We were doing the same deployment of start in the middle and go to the corner diagonal deployments. And yeah, I just basically tried to... I formed a brick wall and hid my Venom Thropes and basically put everything within 6 inches of the Venom Thropes and said, well, I'm going to at least be -1 to hit, but cover doesn't matter because everything's like AP 3 or 4, especially since he has a Viper, and hiding doesn't really work because he has the mobility to just get whatever angle he wants. So I hid the important pieces, which were the Biovores, the Hive Tyrant, and the Venom Thropes, and basically said he can shoot at anything else as much as he wants. This is halfway through his turn 1, or maybe the end of his turn 1, where his shooting, he killed 8 of my 10 barb gaunts, which I just deployed on the front line kind of as bait. I'm like, hey, here, shoot this. It's what's right in front of you. And he did. Killed 8 of them. And I think he killed like a Ravener or 2 with some Bright Lances. But that was really all he was able to see. He did not want to go first. I'm very glad he did, because yeah, that meant he had to come out and I wasn't just running straight towards him for him to then blow apart my entire army. However, things to note, his secondaries that he got, he did get a Tempting Target and Assassinate. So unfortunately, Tempting Target turn 1 is super easy for him, especially since he had Scout, Warwalkers, and Infiltrating Rangers. So I told him it had to be the bottom right one, which I'd had Death Leaper and Elictor on. So he came forward with those 2 Warwalkers and fired those at Death Leaper and the other Lictor. Killed both of them, unfortunately. The Lictor, he just overpowered, and then against Death Leaper, I failed 1 save, and he Fate died it to do exactly 7 damage, as Eldar do. And then that meant on my turn, I pushed forward and managed to get Cleanse on the top left as Gene Stealers killed Illic and the Rangers. And I killed the 1 Warwalker at the top left. And then at the bottom right on the other objective, I unfortunately was not able to cleanse it, because the only thing I could do was advance forward the Gargoyles, have them shoot at the Warwalkers, and then move 6 inches onto the objective to try and out OC him. And then my Raveners actually made a decent charge it was a 6-inch charge. The Raveners made a 6-inch charge into the Shadow Specters. And he ended up spending a CP to be -1 to hit with them. And somehow, again, my 42 attacks for my Raveners at Strength 5, AP 1 for 1, twin linked, they killed 2 Shadow Specters, because they had a 3-up save, and like my 11 wounds, he saved 9 of them on a 4-up. So yeah, and unfortunately, my Hive Tyrant was not able to charge. He advanced to get to that point where he's at, and the only reason I did that is because on the top half of the board, all of his Hornets were coming around to they were about to get an angle on me, so I basically ran to go hide behind this building, where I was only going to fight face against those 2 Warwalkers, one of which was able to be tied up by the Raveners. So I was only going to take 2 Bright Lances rather than the 7 that would have been shooting me if I'd stayed where I was. Unfortunately, that does put me a lot closer to all of the Wraith Guard, but I very specifically looked at where he was, and in order for him to get around that wall, only 2 of the Wraith Guard would have been able to see me. So I decided to take 2 Wraith Guard plus 2 Bright Lances rather than 7 Bright Lances. Yeah, so that was my turn. I got my engage for 4 points, plus I was able to cleanse that top left objective, where I killed off 1 Warwalker and Illic with his Rangers, and I did that with the Gene Stealers. And the Raveners killed the Warwalker on the other end. And with that, what that meant was Zach only had his home objective for primary, because I was able to out OC the bottom right with Gargoyles. And then for his secondaries, he drew Extend Battle Lines and Secure No Man's Land. So both of them were... he very much wanted at least 1 objective in the middle, and if he could get both objectives in the middle, he'd have 10 points. However, I had enough pressure on that top left objective that he really wasn't even going to try. And instead, he came forward with the Wraith Guard, blasted away all 6 of my Raveners, and the Bright Lances came and they shot at my Hive Tyrant, and they actually did nothing. I made both of my 4-up invulns, so that was nice. Other than that, he fired everything to kill off my Lictors that were kind of hiding at the center of the table. And the rest of his fire went mostly into Gene Stealers, who popped a Feel No Pain, and he only killed, I think, 5 of them. It was just enough to make me take Battle Shock, so I guess he killed 6 of them. But thankfully, Synapse from the Broodlord, and I passed my Battle Shock. He did get his 5 points for extend battle lines and secure no man's land for 1, as he did put the Warwalker and, as you can see, a bunch of Wraithguard on the objective to out OC my Hive Tyrant. And then this is now my turn, turn 2. So I did hold my objective and the top left for 7 primary. And with Spore Mines and Gargoyles cleansing the top left, I managed to get cleanse 1 objective for 2 and get my full 4 on engage. The Hive Tyrant, I'm pretty sure he charged and killed something in... it was the Shadow Specters. The Shadow Specters had jumped out of combat with the Raveners, and then my Warriors and Barbgaunts shot at the Shadow Specters to kill them, and killed all but 2 of them, and I only had the Hive Tyrant left to shoot at them, and rather than fire my heavy Venom Cannon and, get 1 shot or 2 shots, he then just uses a Fate Die to pass because they have a 3-up save, and I'm only AP 2 with our heavy Venom Cannon, so... rather than that, I fired at a Warwalker, which he then used to Fate Die to save it because it had 3 wounds left. So did nothing there, and the Hive Tyrant had to charge the Shadow Specters rather than being able to charge into a Warwalker. So he killed those and then piled in onto the objective. Whereas in the top, you can see I ended up charging my Raveners into a Hornet and my remaining Gene Stealers with Broodlord into another Hornet, alongside some Venomthropes. And what you can't see is my Lictor actually made a charge into a D-Cannon behind the wall, and unfortunately put it down to 2 wounds left after a CP reroll of a 5. So, or no, of a 6. he barely lived. Or no, he Fate Died it. That's what it was. He Fate Died the Warwalker against my shooting, and he Fate Died the D-Cannon against the Lictor to live with 2 wounds left. The Raveners and Gene Stealers did kill both of those Hornets, so this was done in the middle of my turn 2. And then that meant for his turn 3, he did hold his home objective plus the bottom right for 7 primary. He ended up drawing Bring It Down and Engage on All Fronts for his secondaries. Bring It Down was going to be very easy for him this turn, as now the all of the Wraithguard were going to be able to shoot at my Hive Tyrant. And Engage on All Fronts, he does still have 5 Warp Spiders behind that L that he basically has just been bouncing out, shooting something, and then phantasming back. So yeah, then on his turn, let's see, do we have a picture of it? No, we do not, but we do have a picture of the Lictor and Venomthropes getting into combat with that back D-Cannon. However, it did live with 2 wounds left, but as you can see back here, he has tucked his 5 Swooping Hawks, his 3 D-Cannons, and what you don't see is he had an individual Farseer and 10 Guardians with a Warlock and Farseer on bike. My Barbgaunts shot and killed all of the Guardians with the Warlock, and then the Farseer himself managed to live. And then my Warriors shot and killed his 1 Farseer. They were able to get an angle on that. So, yeah, that is what is currently going on, and his back objective also at the end of my turn 3. So then this is showing that, yeah, him with his getting Bring It Down, he swings around and is able to shoot both Bright Lance Warwalkers at my Hive Tyrant plus 6 Wraithguard. And I actually, while using my CP reroll for a save plus my free stratagem reroll for another save, managed to actually tank it with my Feel No Pain and only go down to 3 wounds left. However, then he charged in. And I can't elect not to make attacks, so he charged in, punched me, didn't do anything because he's wounding me on 5s, and I have a 2-up save plus a 5-up Feel No Pain. So he charged me, didn't do a wound, but then I was forced to punch him back, and I killed 3 of them, and then 7 of them got to shoot me again, and that did indeed finish off the Hive Tyrant, especially with him. I think he actually rolled, all of a sudden he got 3 6s and used the Spirit Seer to flip 1 to a 6, and he ended up doing something like 24 mortal wounds to me, so that was fun. I was very much extra dead. So he did manage to get 4 points for Bring It Down, plus 3 points for Engage on All Fronts because of the Swooping Hawks. They ran forward, shot, and then he spent 2 CP to Fire and Fade. And I guess Fire and Fade is just a normal move now, which for Swooping Hawks is 14 inches. So they came out, shot something, and then moved again, and yeah, they just went... They went... What? They went 34 inches in one turn to go get Engage and actually threaten my back line where my Biovores were and contest that objective. Except he didn't actually contest it. He was just off it. He was off by like 2 inches. But they were certainly threatening it for next turn. However, on my turn 4, I did still hold the top left and barely my own for 7 points. Managed to get, again, Cleanse with that top left, and then that's when I really pushed in and destroyed his entire home zone. So all he had left were these Wraithguard plus 2 Warwalkers in the bottom right, and I actually had intentionally turned my warriors around the previous turn in order to shoot his Swooping Hawks if he did come and threaten me. So when he did, my warriors managed to shoot and kill off those 5 Swooping Hawks. So yeah, he then went into his turn 5 with literally just those 2 Warwalkers and his Wraithguard with Wraithseer left, where he got his 5 points for holding that one objective, and he pulled up Cleanse and Area Denial. So he was able to do Cleanse on the bottom right objective, and Area Denial, the guy that gets CP, I guess he has an ability to just shoot like 20 inches in one turn. I don't even know what that was. I didn't ask. But he just shot towards the center of the table and got him 5 points for Area Denial. And for my final turn, I held my objective, the top left objective, and his home objective for 13 primary. So then obviously I got my Engage for 4 and Cleanse for 2. And that left us with a final score of 74 to 66 in Tyrannid victory. So let you guys see how that scoring went, but definitely not a blowout victory, but I did manage to take down Meta Eldar with Tyranids, so that felt pretty cool. He didn't have a Wraith Knight, obviously, but which I certainly would have struggled killing, but I don't think Wraith Knights are quite as effective with the new changes to Fate Dice and them getting a 100+ point hike. But yeah, the event was super fun. I ended up going 4-2, which is about what I expected with Tyranids. I had a very real chance of winning the 2 games that I lost, but Custodes... I think Tyranids can beat Custodes, but they have to be able to shoot them. They can't fight them, so my list needs to change if I want to be able to fight Custodes. And unfortunately, against Imperial Knights, I don't know what Tyranids do. I've tried building like an anti-tank list, and it just still doesn't. So I don't know. However, the only Knight player that I practice against is Ben Neal, and he's the one who ended up winning the entire event with his Knights. So maybe that's why I feel so bad against them, is he's just a really good player. Other teammate, Michael Mann, he ended up winning, or he got second place with unpainted orcs. So that was a pretty Chad move on his part. Just a pretty big flex, getting second place not only with orcs, but also getting it with unpainted orcs, going 5-1. We did have 3 Eldar players that were in the top 8 at the end of the event, so they are very much still powerful. But yeah, super fun event. Hope you guys liked this version of Tournament Report. Let me know if you do, and I'll make some more. So thanks for watching. Talk to you guys later.